Hello, math people. This is Chapter 4, Lesson 4, Part 3, the final part of these percent problems. So we've looked at how to find the percent when you know the whole and the part. The previous lesson to this one, we looked at if you know the percent and you know the total, can you find the part? And today we're going to do one last lesson. In this one, you're going to know the percent, you're going to know the part, and we're going to look for the whole. And I'll explain what that means and how to do that right now. So when you are looking for the whole, we're going to treat this almost identical to last lesson. We're going to set up an algebraic equation. We're going to read the sentence that's before us, and we're going to translate what's there into an equation. The two words that it's helpful to remember is that when you see a percent of something, of means multiply. That refers to the operation multiplication. Another word that's super helpful to know in this is the word is. That means equals. I'll write it the same way. Is means equals. And let's look at what that means. In example 1, it says 50% of what number is 48? All you need to be able to do to solve these problems is go back in time to our algebraic equations chapter. We practiced translating, meaning turning sentences into algebra problems. And let's do that with this one. Here's every piece of this problem. The first piece of this is 50%. The second thing is of. The next thing is what number. The next part of this is the word is. And the last part of this is 48. Each one of those pieces is going to go into an equation. Here we go. 50% is 50 over 100. Of means multiply. What number? Well, when we don't know a number, we represent it with a variable. I'll use x. Is, that means equals. And then the last thing is 48, so 48. So there's our equation. This sentence just turns into this equation here. 50 100ths times x equals 48. This is a one-step equation that you could solve pretty easily. If you forget how to do this, I'll do it right now for you. The first thing I would do is I would simplify 50 100ths because the smaller the fraction, the easier it is to deal with. I'm going to make 50 100ths simplified to 1/2. So 1/2 x equals 48. And what's the inverse of 1/2 times x? I'm going to divide. My inverse operation is to divide by 1/2. And whatever you do on one side of an equation, you do it on the other. So I'm going to divide by 1/2. And I'll be left with x equals, and the only work you have to do is on the side, you need to do 48 divided by 1/2. This part of the problem, you need to actually work that out. As a reminder, when you are dividing and fractions are involved, the slogan that many of you remembered was keep, change, flip. You keep the first fraction the same, you change the division to multiplication, and you flip the second fraction. And from there, 48 times 2 is 96 over 1 times 1, which is 1. So the final answer here is x equals 96. So what that's saying, if we read this statement through, 50% of 96 is 48. Half of 96 is 48. That sounds right. This makes sense. Our final answer of 96 is a reasonable, and in this case, a correct answer. So all we're doing is taking a problem, looking at all of the parts, and turning the parts into an equation. Let's do some practice together on that very skill. So the first one, I'll actually do it with you instead of you doing it on your own. But if you'd like to try it, pause this real quick, write it out, and see what what you can set up. But let's see, 62% of what number is 31? All right, there's all the parts. Now let's translate this. 62% is 62 hundredths. Of means multiply. What number? That means a variable. It's unknown, so I'm using x. Is equals 31. Boom. There's our equation. And I'm just going to rewrite that over here. 62 over 100. X equals 31. I'm going to simplify my fraction. 62 and 100 can both be divided by 2. So when you divide this fraction by 2, it turns into 31/50ths. All right, there's the equation I'm going to solve. The opposite of 31 over 50 multiplied by x is to divide by 31/50ths. And on the right side of the equation, whatever you do to the left, you do to the right. So I'm going to divide by 31/50ths. And whatever I get, x equals that. So I'll do my side work over here. 31 divided by 31/50ths is the same thing as keep, change, flip. Instead of doing all this multiplication, I'm noticing that 31 and 31, I can pre-simplify those two things, cross-simplify. Both of those can be divided by 31, so this will be a 1 and a 1. And now if I finish off my multiplication here, 1 times 50 is 50, 1 times 1 is 1, which is 50. So my final answer, x equals 50. And if I plug that back into my statement just to read it through and make sure it makes sense, 62% of 50 is 31. So a little more than half of 50 is 31. Yep, that sounds reasonable. My answer is in the realm of possibility. I like it. My work makes sense. Let's give it a try on your own with this second example here. I'm going to ask you two questions. Question one is, what equation would this look like? Try your best to type that out. And my second question is going to be, what's the actual answer? So then go ahead and try to solve it on your paper. So I'll pause for a second, give you a chance to set this up, solve it, and then we'll come back together and check how you did. All right, if you translated this correctly, you've got 120 over 100, that's 120%, of what is 72. That's the equation that you should have written down. Now, this can be simplified. 120 over 100, I'll show you on the side here. You could divide that by 10 and get 12/10ths. And you could divide that by 2 and get it all the way down to 6/5. So 120 over 100 is the same as 6 over 5. So now I've got 6/5 x equals 72. I'm going to, as my one step for this, divide by 6/5. Whatever you do to this side, you do to this side. And my final answer, 72 divided by 6/5, is the same as 72 times 5 over 6. And you can cross-simplify if you want. The 6 and the 72 can both be divided by 6, actually. So this would be 6 divided by 6 is 1. 72 divided by 6 is 12. And 12 times 5 on the top, 60 over 1. So final answer here, if you got 60, give yourself a pat on the back. Good job. X equals 60. And let's plug that in. 120% of 60, so more than 60, 20% more than 60 is 72. That makes sense. That answer seems reasonable. All right, one more for you to try. Let's see how you do with this one. This says 50% of excuse me, woo, let me read that one more time. 50 is 125% of what number? Ooh, looks a little bit different, but the process is still the same. What I'd like you to do is piece by piece in the order that this is written, turn this into an equation. Look for the of, the multiply, the is, the equal sign, and all the other pieces in between. And let's see what you come up with as an equation, and then what you come up with as a final answer. All right, so for the equation, 50, that's that, is equals 125%, 125 over 100, of times what? X. So this one was a little different, but it works the same way. We're just looking for all the parts of this and writing it out as an equation. I'm going to write it a little nicer over here. 50 equals, now the 125 over 100, to simplify that, I'm going to divide both of those by 25 to get it as small as I can. That would be 5/4. So this fraction can be simplified all the way down to 5/4. So as I rewrite this equation, I'm going to use 5/4 times x instead of 125 over 100 times x. And then I'm going to solve this. I'm going to divide by 5/4. Whatever you do on one side, you do it on the other. And I'm going to rewrite this division problem over here and solve it. 50 divided by 5/4, which is the same as 50 times 4 over 5. Keep, change, flip. I'm noticing the 50 and the 5 can both be divided by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 50 divided by 5 is 10. And 10 times 4 is 40 over 1. So our final answer here is x equals 40. 125% of 40 is 50. So a little bit more than 40 is 50. That makes sense. Our answer checks out. And that is how you find the part. The way that you do this, just to recap, is read the problem, translate it into an algebraic equation, which is going to take some practice in getting used to. And then from there, just solve the one-step equation, which we did in chapters past. We did this in our algebra unit. So it should be a familiar skill that maybe needs a little bit of work and cleaning up, especially with the fractions, but something you can totally do. We'll save the word problems and whatnot for our in-class time. For now, if you've got questions or comments or things you need to share, feel free. Otherwise, see you all tomorrow. Later.